Ever since I talked about the G4 villains, a second part talking about both G5 villains as well as some more minor antagonists was just a matter of time. Let's show some love to the underappreciated. Opeline. When it comes to reasons for being evil, this one isn't the most compelling. She felt underappreciated in the shadow of Celestia and Luna, and went haywire in the wake of jealousy. She didn't have too much time to explain her reasoning, so this is pretty much everything we know. It is possible that she was actually ostracized, and the sisters could actually have acted mean towards her, but that doesn't feel very likely given what we know about them. Timeline-wise, we don't know much about the sisters back in Skywars. They are Laconland. The next material we have of them that depicts them anywhere close to their time is the Journal of the Two Sisters, as well as the single-issue comic of their time with Starswirl. In the journal, Celestia already acts pretty responsible. I don't consider it likely that she actually bullied Opeline in any capacity. Luna is already pretty eccentric, using the Royal Chancellor voice even back then. This eccentricism is something that can come off as standoffish. Same with Celestia's responsible behavior. So my theory would be that Opeline's perspective is a combination of jealousy towards them, being chosen as representative of the entire pony race, as well as personal resentment towards their attitudes. So now that we have the reasons covered, we need to discuss her actual actions. She threatened the unity of the entire pony species, effectively being the reason why a race war happened. A race war is something I'm going to discuss another time. The impact she had was basically causing G5 as well as imprisoning Twilight onto the Wishing Star. She basically wiped out the entire dragon race to steal their fire, and even in G5 she is still at that, torturing a child. And to top these things off, she also abused someone she was a mother figure to, grooming Misty into a little henchman. That abuse of attachment is one of the most vile things an MLP villain has ever done in my opinion. Most villains abuse their main characters physically, threaten them, attack them, but she took it one step further, towards the emotional abuse. Safe to say, while I was able to see some justification in other villains that I discussed in the last part, Opeline is truly evil, and more real than you would expect. Allora. Allora, on the other hand, doesn't seem as straightforward. Her backstory was shrouded in mystery in officially released material. All we knew was that she wanted to get the Nova Charm to reach some unknown brother. We just saw the harm she inflicted on the residents of Starlight Ridge, but none of the reason. The leaks did help out with that a little, showing us how she was magically separated from Altero, her brother. With that extra info, I had the question of who actually put that voice in her head. She thought that was Altero, and while we never got an official answer, we can speculate. I don't believe that was actually Altero. The voice seemed too evil for that, and their reunion seemed too heartwarming for them to have communicated. So, to me, it seems like she was driving herself crazy, and that's how the voice came to be. She was alone for a while before she met Twitch, a bunny who also can't really be counted as an emotionally and mentally equal company in my eyes, even if they understood each other. So her mind slowly went crazy, making up this voice of her brother, wanting her to come back, to fight the loneliness, and feel a sense of purpose in her efforts. I don't want to take this mental state into account too much for my assessment here, since it's mostly speculation. But in my eyes, it does make her more of a misguided but redeemable character than a straight up evil entity. She isn't evil, but scared, and she just wants to go home. That fear and longing wasn't dealt with properly. How could it? Therapy is difficult when you are never settling down. And because of that, it manifested in this anger and violence. That brings us to her actual actions. Mind controlling an entire town to work for her as slaves. And while I have proposed reason for her outbursts and anger, that doesn't absolve her from fault. Slavery, believe it or not, is a pretty major crime. Not to mention the mind control, removing any agency from the residents of Starlight Ridge. Undoubtedly traumatizing them for life. We still see Comet fearing Allora later on, and who can blame him? She exploited the vulnerable and weak, in her eyes. What makes the case of the people of Starlight Ridge against Allora even stronger is that they likely would have helped her if she had just asked. They were very welcoming as soon as they knew there was no threat from them. If Allora had simply asked for help, I'm certain that the ponies would have loved to help her out with the search for a way home, similarly to how they did later in The Greatest Gift. So no, she was not right, but she is not irredeemable. A scared cat who gets converted by the power of friendship, Oh, how very MLP. And definitely way more in the right than Opeline. At least she had a discernible good reason for why she went crazy. Just don't mind control anyone again, get some therapy, and then we're good. Sprout and Posie. Yeah, I'm not even gonna entertain this one. They were racists. Yes, groomed by society towards racism, but still racist. So no, they weren't in the right. But we are happy to welcome them back, now that they have overcome their prejudices. Though I would have given Sprout, and especially his mother, a little more repercussions for inciting and almost carrying out a genocide. Flim and Flam. I do have some more for the G4 lovers. Flim and Flam are some of the most intriguing G4 villains, since all they are is basically a representation of capitalistic greed. All their motivation is based on money. We don't know why they became so greedy, we just know that they are. And in some societal structures, it seems like there's nothing wrong with that. Look at the modern US. The capitalists run the country, and it's basically made for them. Money as a motivation is incredibly common, but like with Flim and Flam, it causes other aspects in life to fall short. First, it almost destroys a small family business with the Apple family. Then later, it tries to gain from education. I don't have any problem with Las Pegasus. Yes, that can be exploitative too, but I'm more passionate about the education factor. Education is a right in most countries, including my home country. Paying for Friendship University would have confused my child brain if I had watched it as a kid. Like, what do you mean schools cost that much? How is that allowed? But again, does that really mean that they were wrong for what they were doing? Even Starswell endorsed them, and if anyone would know, it would be a celebrity. Yeah, I'm gonna cut the act short. It's extremely exploitative and encourages the class divide. Only the rich have access, which means only the rich can get the opportunity to grow and evolve. That may not have been their raison d'etre, but it was the result of their recklessness and greed. So were they right? Well, I think there's a case to be made for their drive. Nothing wrong with earning some good money. They just don't go about it in the right way. So, I was pretty mean about the characters so far. I should probably find someone who wasn't in the wrong for some balance. But who? Last time it was Chrysalis. Who'd be the most controversial among the smaller villains? Oh, I know. Lightning Dust. Yes, she was reckless, but she was also skilled. She would have made for a fantastic Wonderbolt. She needed a bit of a stronghold to rein her in a little, but that's exactly what the Academy could have done with more time. She never meant to hurt anyone. At least not in the beginning. We'll talk about her later appearances in a sec. I feel like Spitfire, in a weekend of specialized drills, could have completely turned her from an overly reckless daredevil to one of the Wonderbolts with the most potential. Imagine what two ponies on Rainbow Dash's level could have done together. A mutual sonic rain boom, which definitely would be something she could reach. Would be a devastating weapon in the arsenal of Equestria's military. The Wonderbolts are mainly show ponies, but have been used as flying fighters as well. Even in their shows, a dual rain boom could be the highlight of every show. And it's not like Rainbow Dash never endangered ponies with her recklessness. Now, in the washouts it's a bit less clear. She actively endangers Scootaloo, but I think that also could have easily been prevented by the course of action I mentioned earlier. Of course, if we just look at how it turned out in the end, no way. She is not justified. She almost killed a kid. But if she had been given the proper tools, she could have been one of the strongest equestrian assets. She may not have been nice, but I definitely respect her drive to win. In terms of villains, she is definitely more on the correct side. Chancellor Neighsay. Well, right back to the racists. The franchise about colorful ponies being all different shapes and sizes, and yet still friends, has surprisingly many of those. Did you really think he was gonna be any different than Sprout and Posie? At least those two had ages of indoctrination as a reason for being like that. But Neighsay? He lives in a globalized society with dozens of species, and yet, he's a pony supremacist. Dude, you aren't even part of the most powerful pony species. Your main power comes from an artifact, and from a book that nobody else is gonna bother reading cause it's bureaucracy that even the Germans would be ashamed of. He is seeing reasons at the end, but none of his actual actions are justified or right in any capacity. It's not even out of fear. There's no fear of other species in his eyes, just bigotry. Throw him off the EEA and make him work in the coal mines or something. Babseed. Now, Babseed is a different matter. She's a bully on her tail, makes us hide and bail. Bullying isn't right. But like, we wouldn't condemn someone to the deepest circles of hell because of bullying for a week. Was she right? No, of course not. Was she justified? Also no. But she had her reasons. That makes sense to a child. She got bullied herself and wanted to avoid it in a new place. The peer pressure of trying to fit in with the bullies, to not become their next target. She even gets reformed in the same episode that she was introduced in. I feel like asking if any of the villains were right fits better in the previous instance of this. But oh well, we'll just run with it. She is a misguided child, acting out of fear, being stopped early enough so she couldn't do actual damage. She even helps more ponies later on, more than making up for her misdeeds. Trixie. Now, Trixie, she can do no wrong, get off her back for some youthful mistakes. She was totally justified in showing off her skills. She is the great and powerful after all. I would argue that the main six were the true antagonists in this scenario, trying to stop a fantastic amazing show like this. Of course, this insolence would drive her towards getting something like the Allora amulet. If anyone deserves it, it's her after all. I would even go so far as saying that it's a birthright as the great and powerful. Okay, my own love for Trixie aside, I do genuinely think that they overreacted in Ghostbusters. The actually bad events were caused by snips and snails, endangering everyone. Yes, they were sure Trixie could handle it, but that still doesn't make it her fault. It also doesn't make it not her fault though. But at this point, I definitely wouldn't have seen her as the villain capable of the Allora amulet's destruction. Yes, with the amulet she definitely wasn't in the right anymore, and it was a severe overreaction. But I also sympathize with her, being shunned for her show. You could have taught her humility in a different way, instead of public humiliation. I'm not saying she didn't need to be taken down a peg, but this was way too extreme. She was in the right to be upset after Ghostbusters, but overdid things later with the amulet. That was an overreaction for an overreaction. I'm aware that there are a bunch more minor villains, but this video is already getting long for my standards. If you'd like me to discuss Equestria Girls villains, as well as the rest of the small timers, let me know in the comments. So, which villain do you think was in the right? There are no wrong answers except for the racists. Let me know, and until next time.